You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based grief and loss podcast for Black women, where you will hear stories of miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, and infertility to learn there is a testimony in tragedy. You will learn how to heal, gain clarity, find hope and peace, and turn your pain into your purpose after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee. Welcome to episode 99 of the Sisters in Loss podcast. Have you heard of the term chemical pregnancy or blighted ovum? Well, in today's episode, our guest, Brittany Bronson, explains her journey to motherhood and how it began with 2 chemical pregnancies and 1 blighted ovum. She was referred to a reproductive endocrinologist only to be diagnosed with unexplained infertility. They endured 2 rounds of fertility medication with no luck and decided to take a break. A month later, they conceived their rainbow baby Carter naturally. In this episode, Brittany takes us on that journey of being pregnant after loss and infertility. This episode is for you to listen to if you want to learn about a chemical pregnancy, blighted ovum, and stepping out on faith to trust God during your journey to motherhood. Here is Brittany Bronson.
Well, thank you, Brittany, for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So I'd like for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes. So I recently turned 31. It's crazy. But I am in social work. I got my master's in social work. I primarily work as a children and adolescent therapist. I have a lot of experience in working with children and youth in the foster care system. I think that's where the bulk of my experiences come from. So with that, I'm working with kids who have just dealt with so much like trauma and loss and grief and a lot of that. So I've kind of started working with like grief and loss early on and, helping kids to heal. That's always been my passion, is just to help people, especially. I love kids. I think, as we all think, they're the future. And, you see with adults, adults are kind of set in their ways. Like, I know I can be kind of set in my ways. And so with kids, there's still some I'm making up my own word here, moldability, to be able to help them, to give them healthy coping skills and to help build their self-worth. Because a lot of the kids I worked with, especially in foster care and in probation as well, they don't have that. They were either abandoned by their families for whatever reason. And, they don't have a lot of self-worth. So I kind of took it upon myself to kind of help build that, especially, in the African-American community and our community. I think it's just really important to build each other up. And, that's just kind of been my passion. So.
Absolutely. So take us back on that journey to motherhood and just share with us your loss and infertility story.
Yeah, of course. So it was about a little more than a year after me and my husband were married, and we were talking about like, okay, of course we want kids. When do we want to start this? And, we decided like, hey, I think we started at the end of May, right? We were like, okay, May, we're gonna do this. We're gonna try. And I don't know what it was, but I always had it in my mind that it was gonna take me a long time to try, like to conceive. And I don't know why. I don't know if it had to do with growing up. My mom would always tell me the story about like, oh, me and your dad tried for you for like over a year, and I thought I would never be able to have a baby. And then finally you came. So I don't know if it was just hearing that story over and over growing up, where I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a hard time, conceiving. But I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me, and I just was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have a hard time, so let's try now. It could take a year longer, but let's just give it a try. So I was really surprised. After the second month of trying, I got pregnant, and that was in July of 2016. So I was like, oh my gosh, like on the second month, like this is huge. We were so excited, so happy. I was just like, man, what is my luck? And a few days after we got a positive pregnancy test, I started to cramp. I remember that day really vividly. So I was at work and I was just cramping, but it wasn't intense. It was kind of dull. And I was like, okay, this is probably like implementation cramping. I've read about this. This is normal. Like, it was nothing that alarmed me because honestly, I've never been pregnant before. I didn't know what to expect. So I was just like, okay, that's probably what it is. I wasn't bleeding at that point. So the day went on. I got home from work, and then the cramping just got more and more intense. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on? And it got to a point where I couldn't even sit. I had to like walk around because that's just how much pain I was in. And I was just like, oh, I need to take a shower. Maybe that would help. I was just pain, like holding myself in the fetal position. I was just like, oh my gosh, is this what it's like, you know, being pregnant? Is it like this painful? And I remember I was in the shower and it was just unbearable pain. And then it was this like instant like relief. And I wish I could really describe in that moment like what it was, but it was like someone turned off a light, you know, kind of deal with the pain. So it was like, okay, instant light switch off. It was weird. And I feel like that was the moment where my pregnancy kind of subsided and it started to, you know, decline in a sense, if that makes sense. I don't know. I just always felt like that was the moment because I just felt like this just such intense pain. And then for it to just be gone, just all of a sudden, you know, I always thought that was kind of weird. But anyway, the next morning I woke up and I started bleeding heavily, like I was on my period. So I told my husband we needed to go to the hospital. We went. They had me take a pregnancy test and it came back negative. And they said, you know, I'm sorry, you had a chemical pregnancy. And I was like, what the heck is that? Like, that sounds crazy. Like, what is this? And they explained to me what it is. And pretty much what a chemical pregnancy is that the egg gets fertilized, but for whatever reason, it's not able to implant into the uterus. And so it just kind of dissolves and it kind of, you know, turns into a period. So chemical pregnancy usually lasts like a few days to maybe like a week or so. I remember the doctor telling me that a lot of women have chemical pregnancies, but they may not have been aware that they were pregnant, you know, especially if they're not keeping track. You know, like we were serious about, you know, getting pregnant. I had the ovulation sticks. I was tracking my period. We were very serious. So I knew, you know, what was going on. But I thought that was interesting. The fact that the doctor said that a lot of women have these and they don't even know that they had a chemical pregnancy. So with that, the doctor, I remember she just made very light of the situation. She was just kind of like, you know, these things happen. It's very common. You know, I'm sitting up there sad and I'm crying and, you know, I'm like, I can't believe I'm not pregnant. Like, you know, I thought this, you know, you're going to have our baby. And she's like, oh, you know, it's fine. You know, you guys can even start trying, you know, again next month if you wanted. Like, you'll be fine. You'll be back here in no time. And I just, you know, remember the doctor just being so dismissive about it, like, you know, it's whatever, it's common, you know, and kind of made me feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be this sad about it. It's something that's stuck with me. So, you know, I go and I tell my husband, you know, and he's more so kind of confused, you know, with that one. He's just like, wait, what? He's like, I thought you were pregnant, but you're not. And I remember him just saying like, oh, you know, I'm disappointed. Disappointed, like you're disappointed if someone, you know, flakes on you with plans, or you're disappointed that, you know, you don't get the, let's see, what is it? Like, you don't get the, my brain is like, it's not like, but, you know, you're disappointed that you don't get what you, like, oh, they ran out of salad or something like that. But, you know, when it comes to a baby, you know, you don't think to use that term, like, oh, I'm just disappointed. Like, this was something that we really wanted. This is something that we thought was happening. And, you know, it was really, really sad, but in the brink of that. So like a few days later, we had so much going on. I had my parents come and visit me in California, which is where I live. And like we had friends coming and family visiting, and I just had so much going on. I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't want them to worry. I know how especially my mom gets. So I was just kind of like, well, you know what? This is fine. This is only going to happen once. So I'm just going to brush it off. We're going to move on and keep it moving. So that was the story of my first loss. So we decided, like the doctor said, to try the next month. And to my surprise, we got pregnant again. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. You know, this is going to stick this time, you know? And we were a lot more confident, and we're like, okay, like this is good. And I actually stayed pregnant for almost a week. So, and that was huge. And then one day I was at work, I went to the bathroom, and I saw that I started spotting, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, this is happening again. I cannot believe it. And then I quickly went into like denial defense mechanism mode. And I was just kind of like, you know what? No, this is implementation bleeding. This can't happen to me twice. God would not do this to me. So you know what? I'm fine. And I just kind of went on with my day. I still continued to bleed. I decided to take another pregnancy test the next day, and it was negative. So that just kind of reassured me, like, okay, you had another chemical pregnancy, and that really kind of broke me down. And I was just kind of like, all right, well, I don't know what's going on, but okay, well, this isn't happening, and I don't understand it. And yeah, from there, it was just kind of like, okay, let's see. I don't know what's wrong, but we'll see. And then that happened in September. And so come November, me and my husband actually went on a very delayed honeymoon to South Africa, which was amazing. Definitely enjoyed ourselves. We weren't really focused on like, okay, let's try to conceive and try to have a baby. It was about having fun, and whatever happens, happens. We come back and I'm super jet lagged. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I'd never been out of the country before. So I was like, oh, I'm just really, really tired. And this is crazy. And I just couldn't get out of it. And then I noticed I had a lot of like motion sickness and things like that. And lo and behold, again, I was pregnant. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I remember it was Thanksgiving when I found out. And I didn't honestly know what to think. I took a test because we were getting ready to go over family's house. And my family loves to drink. I love to drink. So I don't know, something just told me like, make sure, take a test. Just make sure you're good. It came out pregnant. And I remember I was in the bathroom for like 20, 30 minutes just trying to figure out what I was going to say to my husband. Like, was I just going to keep it to myself because this is going to end in another chemical pregnancy? Like, this is only going to last for a day or two. What am I going to do? Where are we going to go from here? And ultimately, I just was like, what, it's better just to be open. And I told him I was pregnant. And he was like, well, okay, this is good. And I felt like, I don't know what it was. I just felt different during this pregnancy. I felt like, okay, like this is really it. I said that about the second one, but I just felt, I don't know how to describe it. It was just a different feeling with this one. It was Thanksgiving. I felt like it was a good omen, right? I was like, I found out on Thanksgiving, which is 1.5 year anniversary of our wedding. Like, this is good things. And the due date of this baby was going to be in August, which was around the same time that we lost the first pregnancy. So I was like, what? This is a rainbow baby. I've read stories about people who've had miscarriages and like a year later, they have their baby. So like, this is it. This is our rainbow. And I was scared to death each and every day of this pregnancy. Every time I went to the bathroom, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to see blood? But I just remember I would just pass these little mini milestones. Like, oh my gosh, I passed being pregnant for 5 days. It's been a week. It's 2 weeks. And it just kind of grew and grew. And then we got to our first appointment with our OBGYN. And, this is the one where you get the, ultrasound and you get to hear the heartbeat. And we were really excited. I was about 7 weeks or so with this pregnancy. And I had no issues. I had no bleeding. I had no cramping. I was nauseous, but I felt good. I was tired. I was like, yes, like, this is it. So, we get to the date of our appointment and, they're doing all the, do the pregnancy test. Past that, yes. Pregnant still, awesome. And then when it came time for the ultrasound, the OBGYN was looking and just wasn't really saying anything. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, what's going on? So she's like, okay, I see the sac, but I don't see any kind of a baby. I don't hear a heartbeat or anything like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, like this was supposed to be it. This was supposed to be a rainbow baby. I had no issues. I had no anything. Like, I had no signs that something was wrong. And they're like, okay, well, you know what? Let's not panic yet. She said, sometimes your dates could be off. So, let's give it another week or two. Because sometimes what happens is, like I said, your dates are off, and when you come in a week or two later, you actually, you see the baby, you hear the heartbeat and all that good stuff. So let's just try to be positive. And so I was like, okay. But when I went home, it was just so crushing. I'm like, why can't I do this? Why can't I just be normal, quote unquote, and just get pregnant and just have this, have a baby like a regular person? Why am I struggling so much? And so we went back a week later, and they still couldn't find anything. So they diagnosed me with what's called a blighted ovum. And what that is, again, egg is fertilized, sac develops, but for whatever reason, the egg just kind of vanishes, just for, I don't know, it's usually due to like a genetic defect, or sometimes they just don't know, but there's no egg, to grow into a baby. And so that's what I was diagnosed with. And also there's another term for it. It's called miscarriage. So my body, like I mentioned before, I had no symptoms of, having this issue. And so when that happens, they call it a miscarriage. So my body essentially did not recognize that there was something wrong with this pregnancy. So I was going on like normal. I was producing HCG hormones normally. I was still sick and throwing up. My body was like, hey, no, this is still a viable pregnancy, even though it wasn't. And that was a very frustrating situation, because once I learned that my pregnancy was no longer viable, I didn't want to have any symptoms of pregnancy, and it made me angry. And I just felt like it was really cruel for my body to not be able to recognize it, and I just wanted it to be taken care of naturally, but it couldn't for whatever reason. So I had to get medication to induce my miscarriage, which was not fun. But yeah, there was that.
Today's podcast episode is sponsored by Living Waters Doula Services. Out of her belly will flow rivers of living water. Rivers carry life and bring it forth to those who need it. I am excited to begin offering Living Waters doula services to my sisters-in-laws. What is a doula? A doula is a non-clinically trained support person who provides emotional, physical, and informational assistance before, during, and after childbirth. My goal as your doula is to help you heal, remove anxiety and fear, and find peace and hope on your infertility and pregnancy journey. If you are currently trying to conceive and would like fertility support, if you are currently pregnant after loss, or if you want grief support for your recent loss, I'm available to share space with you as your doula and support you on this journey. For more details about Living Waters Doula Services, visit ericamcafee.com/doula. That is ericamcafee.com/DOULA. I'm excited to share space with you.
Wow. So take us on your healing journey, and then talk to us about this next part of your journey to motherhood, going to an infertility specialist or reproductive endocrinologist, and just take us through that whole process.
Yes. Oh, man. The journey to healing, which is the name of my book, it was really hard. After that third loss, I was just really dark. Like, I felt empty, and I was just angry. I was angry with God. I didn't understand why this was happening. I'm someone that is really, relatively healthy. I've had no major issues or anything. So there's just a lot of I don't understand and whys and this and that. So honestly, I was just kind of in a depression for a while. I'm someone who I love to be around people. I don't know, I love to live life and And I just didn't feel like that anymore. So I really just kind of shut a lot of people out and, just kind of stayed to myself for a while. And I think what helped me a lot in the healing process was my blog. So during all the miscarriages, I'm a huge kind of research person. So I would research just anything and everything about miscarriages. And I really, looked at blogs and stuff that, people who've had these similar experiences just to know like what happens after this and how do you heal? How do you get past it? And to know that people can have happy endings, can have their rainbow babies and things like that. So I was like, you know what? I am not a blog person, but I'm going to try it. And, surely enough, it really helps me heal. Like anything that you read on my blog, it's very raw. So all of my entries are written after my third loss, but I was in the midst of healing then. So anytime I had a horrible, rough day, I would write an entry. So you read my pain, you see it there. I don't sugarcoat anything or anything. So I think just kind of getting it out and just kind of writing, getting it out really helped as opposed to keeping it inside, which is what I had been doing for a long time. And yeah, I think that was a huge part of my healing, was being able just to write about how I feel and felt and questions I had and thoughts and all that good stuff. And therapy as well it's been so instrumental in my healing and being able to talk to someone and have that space, to cry, or to be angry or just confused, but it was, therapy was very helpful in my healing as well. So, and God, of course, I think, God, my relationship with God is very interesting during that time because I would battle him. I'd just be like, I don't understand why you would choose me to go through this. Like, what did I ever do to you? Like, what did I do to deserve this? I'm angry at you. Like, you allow all these people to get angry, to get pregnant so easily. And when I mean all these people, I don't mean everyone, but just, sometimes it's easier for certain people, but I'm just like, okay, well, how come them and not me? I don't understand. Like, I would yell at him. Sometimes I would sit and it looked like I was talking to myself, but I was talking to God. And I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't understand. How could you do this to me? How could you let me go through this? But I think from there, really kind of what changed? I'm like, what really changed for me when it came to that? I think, I don't know. I think just getting out all of the negative feelings and just kind of allowing myself to feel sad and angry kind of turned me. So instead of asking God, like, why, I don't get why you would do this, it's just kind of like, okay, I still don't like this, but you know what? Like, you were preparing me for something amazing, and I know that it's going to come. And I don't know, it just kind of one day a light switch went on again, and it's just kind of like, okay, God, like, I know this isn't an attack on me. This is to make me strong. It's to help me to be a better mom in the future, for that little one that I know is coming, and really just kind of growing in it. And so I started, reading the Bible more again. I started, going to church and not sitting there resentful and angry, just really listening, to the messages. And I felt like a lot of that was for me and helping me to grow and to kind of heal in that. So, that was really it. And I think another healing point was finding answers to figure out what was going on with me. So because I had 3 miscarriages, they diagnosed me with reoccurring miscarriage, and they referred me to reproductive endocrinologist. And so they did testing on me and my husband. It was very intense period. And I remember the first time we went to our appointment and we were in the waiting room, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, we are 29 years old. Like, what are we doing here? And I'm not saying like, oh, you need to be old to go to the, reproductive endocrinologist. But, I just was thinking like, me and my husband are very healthy. And I just didn't get why we were having so much trouble. And it was just so overwhelming being in that room because there were so many couples, so many different types of couples there. And it's just amazing. Like all these people, they have their own journey and they're all going through something and they're all, they all have challenges. And it was just very interesting, to me. But we went and we met with our doctor and we did a bunch of tests. And lo and behold, they could not find anything wrong, which it was frustrating because you kind of in that situation, you want to hear like, yes, there's something wrong with you that can be fixed, of course. But no, they were like, you passed every test and your husband passed every test. And, we're not really sure what's going on. But they suggested that we, kind of do a treatment. So there's something called an IUI, which is intrauterine insemination, which is kind of like a process where you go through these treatments. So they give you medication, they kind of monitor you, they go based on your cycle. You go in for like an ultrasound. They look to make sure you don't have any cysts or anything in your uterus, make sure everything looks good. And then, based on your cycle, they give you certain medication. So for me, they gave me medication called Clomid. And what that does is it helps your eggs kind of grow and mature. And I would have to take that for a certain amount of time. Then I'd have to go back to the doctor, have another ultrasound. They would look at my eggs and they'd be like, okay, like they look really good. And I think we're going to get, maybe 2 or 3 eggs that will come out of, ovulation and things like that. So the more eggs you get, the better chance, of having a baby. And so then from there, they gave me a trigger shot, which I wish I could remember the exact name of it. I think it was Overdrill or something like that. Something like that. But trigger shot, which that helps kind of plan the ovulation. So it makes a very specific time when ovulation happens. And then from there, with IUI, they take a sample of sperm and then they insert it inside the woman's uterus. But for us, because we didn't have any issues that they could find, we could still just, kind of have sex, but, ourselves. We didn't have to do any, special fertilization or anything like that. So we would take the trigger shot and then the doctor said, okay, on these days, make sure you and your husband, you get together and you do what you got to do. And then, I would be put on progesterone. And it's these huge suppositories that I hated. Oh my gosh, I hated them so much. But progesterone is used to kind of help maintain the pregnancy. So if I was pregnant, then that would kind of hopefully give it a better chance of hanging in there. So then I would be on that for a certain amount of time. And then from there, I'd come back to the doctor and take a blood test because sometimes taking an at-home pregnancy test, it may not be as accurate. So I would go and take a blood test. Me and my husband did this medication regimen twice. So for 2 months, we did that and I didn't get pregnant at all once. And it was so frustrating because we get pregnant so easily, so easily. And you finally have these meds and you think yes, this is going to give us a better shot. And you get nothing. Of course, I'm a very impatient person. I didn't wait for the blood test. I was like, no, I need to know if I'm pregnant now. So I would buy a pregnancy test and I would just see negative. I'm like, oh, and that would just crush me, and it's I just don't get it. I don't get it. And I really have huge respect for anyone who, goes through these medication cycles. I just have such respect for, anyone who goes through that because it's something that is extremely time consuming. And I think that was just the big thing. Like I said, we only did the medication treatments twice just because it took so much of my energy and I was immersed in it. That was my life. It was okay, as soon as your period starts, then I got to call the doctor and make an appointment and come in for the ultrasound and do all of this. And the medication had not so great side effects for me, so it made me really uncomfortable. I'd have a lot of headaches. I had a lot of hot flashes. It made me extremely, extremely emotional. I would cry about anything, and it just was overtaking my life. And I just couldn't go through with that. I needed a break. I just was like, I felt like our lives for the past year and some change had just been about, trying to conceive a baby and maintain my pregnancy. And I just needed time to just enjoy my life again. And it didn't mean I was giving up, not at all. I was so determined. That's one thing about me and my husband. We're very determined people. And I've gotten this question before, like, well, do you think the reason why you had so many miscarriages is because you've been trying so close together? And it's like, no. Well, first of all, it's very blaming, but no, if you have medical professionals saying, hey, you're good to go, you think you are good to go. But I think just mentally, physically, spiritually, I needed a break. And so I actually had gotten a new job during that time. So I was like, perfect. I'll get settled at my new job. We'll give it 3 months and then I'll have my insurance and we can try again. And that was just kind of my thinking, was just to pause and rejuvenate my soul and all that good stuff.
Awesome. So tell us about your pregnancy journey and when you did find out you were pregnant, and then take us on that journey as well.
Yes. So like I said, we stopped, I believe we did the 2 medication cycles in April and May. So then there was June. I started my new job in July. And it was interesting. As soon as I started my new job, I found out I was pregnant. And I don't know what it was. I didn't really have too many symptoms, but it was just something like I just felt it, like I knew I was pregnant. And I remember I went to the store, I got a pregnancy test, took it, and then I saw pregnant. And unlike all of the other times, I was not excited, if I could be very honest with you. I was like, oh no, like here we go again. And, that makes me sad. But it's just, we had been through so much, and I didn't think that this was going to work out. I mean, why should it have? I've had 3 previous experiences that didn't work out. So why should this one be any different? So it was hard. Being pregnant after loss is incredibly hard. It's like a battle every day to be positive, to have faith in God and yourself and your body. Again, just like before, I hated going to the bathroom. I was just like, oh my gosh, am I bleeding? It was like every cramp, every twinge, every lack of pregnancy symptom. It's like, oh my gosh, something's wrong. So I had a lot of anxiety, lots and lots and lots of anxiety. It was really rough in the beginning. I'm going to be very honest. It just seemed like really off timing, to me. At first, I was just like, well, I just started this job. I don't have any health insurance. Like, I've been on these medications to kind of help things along. And now I don't have access to it. So I immediately had to get, health insurance and things like that. And I remember our first appointment going to the, reproductive endocrinologist again. And I was like, okay, I was 6 weeks and some days along. And, I hated every doctor's appointment I had to go to for a while. I would cry. Like, few days beforehand, I would just cry because I was like, this is when they're going to tell me something bad is happening or something's wrong or this and that. So for that first appointment, we went. I remember I broke down while she was getting ready to do my ultrasound. I'm just like, it's going to be the same thing over and over again. And then I remember them saying like, oh my gosh, like there's a heartbeat. And I remember my husband being like, what? Like, and that just kind of showed me too that he also, he was very scared as well. But for him to be like, what? Oh my gosh, there's an actual heartbeat. And we got to hear it. And it was, the most beautiful sound. It's like making me emotional. Just thinking about it, because it's just something that we prayed for so long. And it was such a hard journey. And to finally have that, was so incredible and so amazing and such a blessing. And it was beautiful. So because of my history of recurrent miscarriage, I got ultrasounds once a week up until I was maybe 9-10 weeks or so. And then I graduated to my regular OBGYN. But yeah, I mean, I think each appointment, it was a battle, it was a struggle. But I think being able to hear the heartbeat or to see the baby growing, you know, that was just reassurance of like, okay, like this is really going to be a rainbow baby this time. This is going to stick. And I mean, it was, just thinking about it, you know, like after such a long time of not really thinking about it, it's like crazy just how hard it is to be pregnant after loss. You come to expect the worst. And even though you get these reassurances of like, oh, great, ultrasound, you know, you're, you know, everything looks good, all this and that, blood work looks good, you still just in the back of your mind just kind of think like, you know, like, no, like, you know, like I'm not capable of doing this. My body is not capable of doing this. Something's going to happen. So I think just battling that anxiety was really, really hard for me. And I think it wasn't up until later in my second trimester when my positivity, you know, kind of started to come out more and more, and it started to outweigh the anxiety. And I wish I could sit here and say like, oh, you know, my anxiety was completely gone, you know, by this time. And in all honesty, it wasn't. You know, I had anxiety up until my baby was in my arms. And just, you know, even though it was like a small little bit of anxiety, still like you read so many stories and things like that about women losing their babies and stillbirth and things like that. And so it's like, what makes me different than any of those women? You know, why did these women have to go through this? Like what makes me special? And I think that's something that I kind of had to wrestle with a lot. It's just kind of like, do I really deserve this? You know, and I know, of course, I do now, but it's like, man, like, can this really happen? Can I really have a baby? And I did, and he is amazing. His name is Carter. He is 7 months now, which is crazy. And, he is just such a huge blessing, and I love him. And he just looking at him every day is just a reminder of, like, God's love for me and my husband. And, you know, it's just incredible. And really
awesome. So share with us any other resources. I know you mentioned just writing down and going to therapy, but any other resources or tools that you use to help you on your healing journey?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just kind of finding people who've went through a similar kind of situation. I think on Instagram, there's a huge community of people who are trying to conceive or infertility, you know, struggles or, you know, miscarriage loss. I think kind of just following other people's stories and, you know, kind of seeing like, oh, how people kind of heal and kind of get through this, you know, not fun period, you know, was very helpful. I think I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm not really. I really was just big on just connecting with people who went through similar things that I've went through, and that really helped me.
Awesome. So let's talk about just some encouraging words. Like, what encouraging words can you give the mom out there who is just in that trying to conceive phase so that she can continue to persevere on to get to her rainbow baby?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like, don't give up, which I know it's really hard, especially, you know, when you month after month are trying and you see that negative and you're like, oh, when is this going to happen? I just would just say, just keep having faith in yourself. You're a lot stronger than you know. You can do this. Have faith in God. You know, there's always a reason for pain and for struggle and for suffering. And, you know, I wish like no one had to go through this. But, you know, for whatever reasons, we all have our battles and our challenges and whatnot, but just keep continuing to have hope, even if it's like a 0.1%, you know, hope that you have. Like, at least it's something to kind of get you through, and to know that, you know, one way or another that you will, you know, you'll have your family, and maybe it might not happen the way that you planned, or in the timeline that you plan, but, you know, it definitely could happen. And that you are, like I said, strong, wonderful person. Have faith in yourself. You got this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brittany, for sharing your story and your light on the podcast. I know that my listeners will be blessed from it.
Oh my gosh. And thank you again so much for having me. When I found you on Instagram, I was jumping up and down because I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is just so needed. You know, I really wish that I had found you when I was, you know, going through my miscarriages and things like that, because I think what was missing for me was, you know, like more women of color going through this. I didn't really see that. I saw a lot of blogs of, you know, white women going through this, but like women of color, I didn't really see, and I didn't really hear it. So there's that isolation of like, okay, is there anyone that looks like me that's gone through this? And I really appreciate just your platform and just all the support that you give this community. You're such a blessing, and just thank you.
Thank you so much. And I forgot for you to drop your social link. So where can we find you and follow you on social?
Yes, sure. So on Instagram, my name is Britt. So it's BRITT _Nicole 1015, which is my birthday. Libra, shout out to the Libras. That's Instagram. And then you can find me on Facebook at Brittany Bronson.
Awesome. Thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I pray that this show was inspirational and a blessing to you. For show notes, visit ericamcafee.com/podcast. Please join us in our offline discussions in our private Facebook group by going to sistersinloss.com. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, please rate and subscribe to us and leave us a 5-star review. I pray that you all have a blessed week. Keep the faith, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday.